Chosen, called, sent. A fitting theme for a synod assembly any year, as we are reminded of those words from 1 Peter. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. But this theme takes on particular meaning in a year when this synod will choose and call a new bishop and send forth their beloved current bishop into a new sense of vocation. I'm grateful for an email from that current bishop, Bishop Davenport, which called me to be with you during these days and to have the opportunity during these minutes to talk about not only how members of this synod are chosen, called, and sent, but how we, as the congregations of this synod, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Synod itself, and the whole church, are chosen, called, and sent as we seek to proclaim the mighty acts of God in our world. With a word of thanks to the congregations of the Southeastern Pennsylvania Synod, who each year demonstrate their sense of call by sharing a portion of their offerings and other income to support ELCA ministries in their synods and beyond. This type of sharing is called mission support. Mission support, sometimes called benevolence, provides for so many ministries that we share together through synods and the church-wide organization, including New Start congregations, missionaries, companion relationships, leadership development of rostered ministers, directors for evangelical mission, campus ministry, outdoor ministry, colleges and universities, seminaries, Lutheran social services, ecumenical relationships, social statements, worship resources, racial justice, advocacy, databases, general counsel, governance, workshops, trainings, and gatherings. The list goes on and on. Through your generosity, the church-wide organization received over $750,000 in mission support from this synod. Please thank yourselves. On behalf of the many partners who benefit from your generosity, thank you. We are grateful for the ways in which you have been called to share your resources. This church benefits from the gifts of time and talent offered by faithful volunteers throughout the ELCA who serve on committees and engage in special efforts with and for the church-wide organization. We offer special thanks for the people from this synod who have been chosen, called, and sent to serve the church in various ways. And as I call your name, I invite you to stand. Ms. Tracy Beasley and Reverend Gwendolyn King on the ELCA Church Council. Mr. Emmanuel Elves, who serves on the Committee on Appeals. Reverend Sarah Anderson on the Nominating Committee. Ms. Yvonne Curtis, who serves on the ELCA Task Force on Leave from Call and Specialized Ministry. And Mr. Frank Roth, who serves on the Portico Board of Pensions Board. This past year, this church raised over $20 million through ELCA World Hunger to support hunger and poverty ministries. Thank you for this synod's significant contribution of over $260,000 to this immensely important cause. For 50 years, we have joined together as Lutherans to address the root causes of hunger and poverty around the world through ELCA World Hunger. As we reflect on our last 50 years of ministry together, we know God calls us to respond to the needs of the world now more than ever. We invite you to learn more at elca.org/WH50. Thank you for showing up in your communities on behalf of this church. We were thrilled to celebrate 10 years of God's Work Our Hands Sunday in 2023 with all of you. And how many of you have ever participated in God's Work Our Hands Sunday? If you have, raise your hands. Wonderful. We are called as Lutherans to share God's grace and love. Participating in acts of service in our communities is one of the ways in which we are both called and sent. We look forward to the next 10 years and beyond. Your generosity helps us to share God's love right here at home and throughout the world. You aren't only a part of your congregation, you are part of a global effort. One such effort is Lutheran Disaster Response, which raised well over $13.5 million in 2023 to aid disaster response efforts across the globe, including over $230,000 from this synod. Thank you once more for your valuable, life-saving contributions to this incredible ministry. The Commission for a Renewed Lutheran Church was formed in response to memorials entitled Restructure the Governance of the ELCA that were acted upon at the 2022 Churchwide Assembly. The Commission's mandate is to reconsider the statements of purpose for each of the expressions of this church, the principles of its organizational structure, and all matters pertaining thereunto, being particularly attentive to our shared commitment to dismantle racism. 35 diverse members from across the church were appointed to the Commission in 2023. The Commission has met 5 times, both online and in person, and divided the work of that initial mandate amongst 7 internal committees. The Commission members have engaged in over 60 listening sessions across this church, offered an online survey, and are currently preparing recommendations for a faithful path forward that equips and empowers all expressions of the ELCA for relevant and faithful ministry in our contemporary context. A report and recommendations will be presented at the 2025 Churchwide Assembly with a possible recommendation for a special assembly of the ELCA. To connect with the work of the Commission, please check out the ELCA website through the link or the QR code. You can also find the Commission at ELCA CRLC on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Ms. Thelma Pruitt-Jacks was appointed from this synod, to be a part of the Commission. And there's Thelma right there. Thank you so much. Please hold Thelma and the Commission's work in your prayers as we seek to live into the ministry and mission God is calling us into in the ELCA. Over 14,000 will gather in July for the ELCA Youth Gathering and related events. The residents of New Orleans have welcomed the ELCA to their city many times over the years, and they are ready to welcome us again as thousands of youth and adults gather to experience how they are created to be. I'll be there. Please stand if you'll be there. Okay. I'll see you in New Orleans. We are indeed chosen, called, and sent to share God's love for this world. And while this word of thanks on the screen is meant for all in this gathered community, I'd like to share a special word of thanks for one who will be sent forth to discover new ways of living out her sense of vocation. 6 years ago this week, I was overseeing my first synod bishop election in Texas when the history-making news came of the Reverend Patricia Davenport being elected, chosen, called as bishop of the Southeastern Pennsylvania Synod, the first African woman to be elected as a bishop in our church. while I had met now Bishop Davenport in her role as a director for Evangelical Mission. I came to fully appreciate the wisdom and skills she brought to her ministry when she became part of the Conference of Bishops in 2018, and when she and I served together on the executive committee of the Conference of Bishops following my election as secretary in 2019. Bishop Tracy Bartholomew served as chair of the Conference of Bishops during that time, and thus chaired the meetings of the executive committee. Given her close working relationship with Bishop Davenport, I invited her to share a few words. From Tracy. Bishop Davenport and I served as chair and vice chair of the Conference of Bishops. A bit unusual, having two from the same region serving in these positions. But we never forgot that we were representing the whole conference. She took on the role of hospitality, welcoming and saying farewell to our colleagues with prayer and sometimes dancing. In our executive committee meetings, her voice was one of wisdom and clarity. Bishop Davenport always made sure that we had spoken to those most affected by any decisions we were making, and that our work expanded the reach of the gospel. Having this sister bishop right next door was a gift to me, and I believe the whole church. Thank you, Bishop Bartholomew. Any of us who know Bishop Davenport as a friend on Facebook know that there are words that frequently appear in her posts. I use those words now, Bishop Davenport, to say how grateful I am, we are, for the many ways in which you have blessed this church with your wisdom, compassion, proclamation, and presence. Thanks be to God that you were indeed chosen, called, and sent as a bishop of this church for such a time as this. In 2013, Bishop Eaton was chosen, called, and sent to be the presiding bishop of our church, and it is now my delight to invite Bishop Eaton into this gathering to receive, as we receive her message to the Synod assemblies.
There is a saying, may you live in interesting times. At first glance, this sounds like an ironic curse. Interesting? What? A pandemic? War in Gaza and Ukraine? Famines in Sudan and Ethiopia? Stress in our families, our communities, and even in our congregations? Who needs interesting? Give us boring. Give us garden variety. Give us the same old, same old. But what if may you live in interesting times is not a curse, but a call? Yes, we live with danger and uncertainty, but as people of the resurrection, we also live in hope and have felt God's love, which sustains us even in the most difficult times. God's love, most clearly expressed in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, is always real. Some of life's hard realities may make it difficult to perceive. Maybe we are trying too hard. Maybe we think that only monumental occasions and dramatic feelings are manifestations of God's love. People come to our congregations because they want to share and feel God's love in community. They want to know that they are not alone, that they are forgiven, that God's love gives us the grace and space to try and fail, to sin boldly, as Martin Luther says. And we, as broken as we are, as dulled as we might have become to the reality of God's love, have not been cursed with interesting times, but are called to serve as ambassadors of God's love. We see God's love in the sacraments, where God claims each of us with God's love and nourishes and strengthens us with Jesus' own body and blood. We see God's love when we pray because we can enter into the sacred space of God's love in joy, in sorrow, in hope, in times of desperation, because God's love is real and God receives our prayers even when we feel we can't pray. We see God's love in forgiveness when hearts and lives are mended and hurt and alienation are taken away. We see God's love in acts of service when we, liberated by God's grace, reach out to our neighbor. And we experience the life-changing love of God in Scripture, in worship, in music, dance, and art. Yes, we live in interesting times, but these interesting times are made meaningful and filled with possibility and hope because God's love is real. Go in peace and share God's love with one another and all creation. Thanks be to God.
Yes, we live in interesting times, but these interesting times are made meaningful and filled with possibility and hope because God's love is real. How good it is to be with you in the Southeastern Pennsylvania Synod as together we claim and proclaim the ways in which we are chosen, called, and sent to go out into the world in peace, to share God's love with one another and all creation. Thanks be to God.